Thank you so much, Dolores, and thank you all for coming out on a cold, wintry night. I think the idea of having the talk tonight on women's health was really because tomorrow is International Women's Day, and to align it with that. So I suppose when I was doing putting this together, I really looked at, I suppose, things that I thought would be of interest to a general population. So I suppose what I'm going to start with first is a little bit on the evidence of how we derive evidence and how to separate fact from fiction. Then just look at a couple of or a few common nutritional myths, then to go through really what are the most important list of things or to-dos that we should do and why we should do them, and then maybe just to touch on a little bit of a few common related nutrition related conditions that affect women. So the three I chose were breast cancer, because that affects so many women, osteoporosis again affects an enormous number of women, and irritable bowel syndrome, because again that affects a huge number of women. So I suppose first of all I looked at sort of the stages of a woman's life, and I found this slide which I thought was actually very good. So you can have like 7 stages, 5 stages, or 3 stages. My favourite is actually the 3 stages, which was like peas off your father, peas off your husband, and then peas off your son-in-law. But the other stages, obviously you can see there, I like the middle one as well, to grow up, to fill out, to slim down, to hold it in, and then to so what. So what. So again, I think that's we should have a laugh as well about things. The stages of a woman's life, there's actually 10 of them, and obviously I can't cover the 10 tonight. So really what I'm going to try and focus on is the ones in the centre there, so sort of your adult years. Professor Helen Roach actually covered healthy aging in the last seminar, or the last lecture series, and there are a number of others, and I just have a little sort of notice at the end to show, so that you know what the next ones are going to be. Okay, so when we're looking at our modern lifestyle, it's actually quite difficult, because a lot of people now are working either through necessity or because they want to. Most people have a family, whether it's their own or an extended family. Leisure. Most women also get very little me time, and sometimes it's just really nice. I mean, all of you remember when you had smaller kids, or and you you just wanted even like 5 minutes to go to the loo in peace. So like trying to fit all of that into your day, into your 24 hours is quite challenging. Plus trying to put together time to prepare meals, to exercise as we should, and to do everything else that we should do. So I suppose first of all I just wanted to look at how we decipher fact from fiction, okay? And there's 2 dietitians who work in the UK, and they have this Instagram called The Rooted Project, which I would think if you want to follow somebody on Instagram, follow them, because they have really nice infographics, really sensible information. And really here they are trying to explain how we look at evidence. So we have low quality evidence going to high quality evidence. And the low quality evidence we call expert opinion. But unfortunately, as Dolores said, there's an awful lot of expert opinion now that is not expert and no way expert, all right? The next layer of evidence is what we call observational studies. So that's where you follow, follow groups of people in the population, and you look and see, say, at the end of a period of time, what conditions they develop, and you try and look backwards and see what were the characteristics perhaps that those people had. Okay, so for example, we know that fruit and vegetable intakes are associated with reduced cardiovascular disease. We know that high saturated fat intakes are associated with high cardiovascular disease. We know that high consumption of fish is associated with lower cardiovascular disease. And at the very top we have experimental studies, all right? And those are randomized controlled trials which really give, say, one intervention to one group and a control group. And that's very easy to do when you've got a tablet, but it's very difficult to do with diet, okay? So it just means that the evidence, when we look at diet dietary studies is much more difficult to obtain, okay? And that complicates the whole matter. But what we do know, if you look at this one, is that YouTube videos, personal anecdotes, gut feelings, parental instincts, no matter how important we feel they are, and some guy you know down the road, your mother, your father, you know, none of these actually, no matter how much they persuade you, are actually evidence, okay? None of these are evidence. What we're looking for evidence is these high quality meta-analysis where they take a number of studies, all of the evidence that's there, and look at it collectively to get the weight of evidence that's available. Okay, so this is one that I just picked up today because there was a whole lot of stuff today on Twitter about celery. I drank celery juice for a month to heal my gut. Here's what happened. She felt wonderful, okay? Absolutely wonderful. But is that evidence? No, it is one person who's probably been, you know, like I suppose celery juice isn't the worst thing now, to be honest, but you know, she's probably been paid a few bob to have that up on Instagram, okay? So I think you have to just be really careful what you see and what you take as evidence. All right, so what is healthy eating for women? And again, I suppose just to even put up your hands and think, you know, is it using coconut oil? Do many of you here use coconut oil and think it's healthy? A few, okay, all right, okay. Do any of you follow a vegan diet and think it's healthy? Nobody, all right. Does anyone follow a low carb diet and think it's healthy? A few, okay, all right. Does anyone follow a dairy-free diet and think it's healthy? Another few, okay. And does anyone follow a gluten-free diet like good old Djokovic and think it's healthy? No, okay, all right. None of these are particularly healthy eating for women, okay, unfortunately. It would be very easy if we could say they are, but they're not. And I suppose just to let me explain that a little bit for you. So if we look at coconut oil, for example, versus olive oil, or you could say rapeseed oil, canola oil, even one of the monounsaturated oils, okay? The work that was done on coconut oil was actually done in Polynesian populations, okay? What is relevant for Polynesian populations and what is sponsored by the government of Polynesian populations who want to sell coconut oil is very different than what is relevant for an Irish population, okay? And you can see here, if we just look, saturated fat in coconut oil is very high, 86%, and saturated fat in olive oil is very low. It's mainly unsaturated fat. So if you like the taste of coconut oil, there's probably no harm to have a little bit of it, but it is not a healthy choice, okay?
What about applying it to your skin, you know, as in oil?
Applying it to your skin, I mean, it's going to be the same as any other oil. You're not really going to absorb an awful lot through the skin, you know, so it's going to be, like if you're getting it cheap, I'd say fine, but if you're not, if you're paying a lot for it, no, okay. It's not going to have any advantage, okay. So coconut oil is not a healthier alternative to olive oil.
Is that just for women or would that be for?
That's in general, to be honest, exactly, all right. So again, the oils that are healthy are canola, olive, corn, peanut, safflower, soybean, sunflower. If you want to buy avocado oil, it's lovely, you know what I mean, but you are paying a premium. You're fine with olive oil, you're fine with canola oil.
What about rapeseed oil?
Rapeseed is the same as canola, yeah. All right, and those who are out recommending other oils are generally being paid to do so, you know, whereas bodies like the Irish Nutrition and Dietetic Institute or, you know, the American Dietetic Association or the Irish Heart Foundation are not, you know what I mean, they're not getting money for pushing particular products, okay? So you will find your healthy fats in lots of foods as well. You'll find it in avocados, in any oily fish. It doesn't have to be salmon, it can be mackerel, in walnuts. If you want to throw a few chia seeds on cereals, that's all fine, okay? Now, low-carb diets, okay, again, are they good or bad? All right, and we know Mr. Atkins himself died of a massive cardiovascular event, okay? So, I mean, I suppose the proof is in the pudding. I mean, that might have been just very unfortunate, you know what I mean, and that's not fair, but he was a very overweight man who had very high levels of cholesterol, okay? And it certainly, following his Atkins diet, did not do him any good, all right? So we need carbohydrate for energy, all right? All carbohydrates are converted into glucose in our body, all right? We have a metabolic cycles within our bodies, and there's nothing we can do to change those. That's the way we have evolved. We have evolved to convert carbohydrate and sugars to glucose in our blood, okay? And we need glucose for brains to function, okay? So you can look at all of the reasons in the world. There was a very nice review, paper just published this year from the Journal of the American Medical Association, just in 2008, sorry, we're in 2019 now, 2018, which really shows that if you have a low-fat diet that is healthy or a low-carbohydrate diet that's healthy, you lose weight equally, okay? The main thing is that you actually have a healthy diet, okay, and that it doesn't have excessively low fat or excessively low carbohydrate, and that you have protein, vitamins, minerals, and everything else that you need in between, okay? Dairy is the other one, okay? Somebody rang me from the Irish Independent last week, or was the week before, and got me on a bad day. I had cycled in from a bit of a difficult meeting, and and they said, oh, like about soya milk, coconut milk, oat milk, all of these milks, all right? Most of what you're paying for is water. And sugar if they're sweetened ones, okay? And if you look at oat milk, I think then they put the headline, you'd be better off with a bowl of porridge. But you're true, you'd be better off with a bowl of porridge and a handful of almonds. There is nothing wrong with almonds, there is nothing wrong with porridge, okay? The problem is that if you're using these instead of milk, they are not milks. They are not milks. They're being called substitute milks, but they're not. They don't have the same nutrients, and even if the nutrients are added in artificially, you still don't absorb them quite as well as from dairy foods, okay? So if you want to use almond milk, fine, but it is not a replacement for ordinary dairy, for ordinary milk, okay? It doesn't have the same nutrient profile. And they are expensive, and there is a lot of money being made out of these, and there's a lot of young girls who are using these because they think they're more healthy. And even when you look from a food sustainability perspective, okay, which we're all very conscious of now, the amount of water that is required to grow almonds in California is enormous. So like you can't even say from an environmental perspective that they're necessarily better. We also know that there's been a lot of work done about dairy and cancer, and I'll come back to that, and breast cancer, and that came from a woman called Jane Plant, who wrote a book, and so many people with breast cancer feel that they should avoid dairy, and there's no evidence for that at all. Just because one person writes a book and sells it and makes a lot of money, that doesn't mean that it's right or that the evidence is there. So there is no concrete evidence that cutting out dairy cures or prevents cancer or any other chronic disease. The dairy alternatives contain less protein, less calcium unless they're fortified with calcium, so that means it's been added in artificially, and many contain higher sugar content than cow's milk. And there's no evidence that the dairy consumption increases the risk of developing an allergy, okay? So we're really, if we cut out dairy, we're cutting out a very cheap, healthy food, okay? Now, Ireland probably does manufacture too much dairy, but at the end of the day, that we still have plenty of it, and we've really good quality dairy, and we still need it in our diet, okay? Gluten, since Rosanna Davison, well, I think she's sort of gone off a bit now, but and Djokovic, I mean, when you read the stuff online about Djokovic, he had somebody put a slice of bread against his stomach, and then it went funny or something, and then that went that he was celiac, and like he's a or that he was allergic to gluten. I mean, anybody who has celiac disease obviously has to stay on adhere to a really strict gluten-free diet, okay? And that's really important for their health. I mean, if you've got celiac disease, gluten-free diet is the treatment. But Djokovic is a fantastic player, absolutely brilliant. I love him. But he's not a celiac, and a gluten-free diet did not make him the #1 tennis player in the world. Okay, so there's no concrete evidence that gluten causes or is attributable to any health condition except for celiac disease, okay? And cutting it out actually increases the risk of many nutrient deficiencies, because it's very difficult to make breads and gluten-free products that actually have the same nutrient qualities as the ones that contain gluten. Organic is another one, all right? I'm looking at Kirsty over there, who's the head of education and research in Airfield. But organic is, compared to non-organic, there is really very little nutritional differences, okay? There might be a little bit of difference in, say, some of the fatty acids, depending on how the animals have been fed. There certainly can be sometimes a nicer taste, and I think all of us should encourage local eating. So I think, like the Airfield GLOS principles, grow locally, eat seasonally. I was talking to somebody recently who was at a talk in the Netherlands, and there was this woman, and she said, oh, I buy all my organic food in the local market, which was a really expensive market in some posh part of Amsterdam, and the rest of it I buy in South America, or all her spices, or South Africa, in this market in South Africa. So, and she felt that she was doing really a lot for the environment, because she was buying all this organic stuff, but she was flying to South Africa to buy it, you know. So I think we just have to be really a bit careful about what we think is sustainable and what is organic. And if we choose to buy organic because we like it and can afford it, that's fine, okay? But if people eat less fruit and vegetables because they're actually purchasing the organic varieties, they would be better to purchase the ordinary ones and eat more. And that's really, I suppose, the bottom line, okay? Detox, another one to get me wound up, all right? You know, there are so many people out there who are promoting detox diets, all right, and making a lot of money out of them. And as the British Dietetic Association has this lovely infographic, you know, the best kept detox secret, your liver and your kidneys. All right, they work fine, okay, as long as we don't abuse them, okay, which some of us are inclined to do. But so I suppose to move on from that then to the nutrition priorities for women, okay. So I suppose in a way, I mean, they're common sense, you know, they're not anything, there's no rocket science, there's no magic bullet. If there was a magic bullet, then we'd all be taking it, okay, and we'd love if there was a magic bullet. So I suppose the important things are to maintain a healthy weight, really important to try and increase your fibre, fruit and veg, meet your calcium and iron needs, and I'll go through these now in a minute. Get active alcohol, okay, something we're all too, my son is sitting over in the corner, something we're all too fond of, all right? Trying to make sure we don't eat when we're stressed or hungry or just because we feel sorry for ourselves, okay? And then keeping an eye on cholesterol and blood pressure. So there's very clear evidence that being overweight contributes to cardiovascular disease, okay? And more women than men actually die of cardiovascular disease, and it's more difficult to manage in women than in men, okay? We also know that high consumption of unhealthy foods, most of you have heard, I'd say, of the Healthy Ireland surveys, have you? Yes, so they're collecting the data very regularly now. So we can see that about 35% of women eat unhealthy foods at least once a day. Okay, so we can do what we like about buying organic or whatever else, but if we're still eating like bars of chocolate every day, it doesn't really quite balance out, okay? So being underweight or overweight is not good for health. And a healthy body weight does reduce the risk of breast cancer and cardiovascular disease and osteoporosis, okay? So on to our second one, dietary fibre, okay? We know that everybody's supposed to have about 25 to 30 grams of dietary fibre per day, and that in Ireland the average is for women is about 17 grams per day, okay? All right, so it's quite difficult to reach your dietary fibre requirements. It has great effects, great advantages for reducing cancers, cardiovascular disease, glucose tolerance, hyperlipidemia. It helps us make us feel fuller. And we should really be all trying to increase it. And we should all have, I was laughing at this, okay, perfection. My family say you can't have a conversation in our house without it coming back to poo. But poo is really important. And I think it's the problem of being a dietitian's son, okay? Or, anybody, I think all dietitians or all nutrition people maybe are a bit fixated, but poo is really important. So you have a perfect poo, which is like a sausage with some cracks in it, all right? And if we achieve that gives, that helps us to have sufficient dietary fibre, to have a perfect poo, can help protect against cardiovascular disease and many of the other conditions there, okay? Now, it's difficult to try and reach your fibre intake. So again, if we try and look at things, something like nuts is 2 grams. If we're supposed to have at least 25 grams per day, it's quite difficult to reach that, okay? So we have a big bowl of bran flakes in the morning, it's 8 grams, a banana is 1.5, an apple 2.4. It's not as if we can eat one food that gives us a load of fibre, okay? So we can try and increase it. Things like beans and peas are very good, so they add a good bit extra. But things like nuts, bananas, flax seeds over yogurt, an apple, bit of hummus and carrots can all give a little bit. Changing to your whole wheat pastas can all help, all right? But it's still quite difficult to get up to that 25 grams per day or 30 grams per day, all right, that we need. Okay. And that's really important. So maintaining a body weight that is normal and having a good fibre intake. The next one is the fruit and veg. Okay, so we want to do positive things for ourselves, we increase fruit and veg. And Imperial College in London, which is one of the highest ranking universities in the UK, had a study to find out what is the maximum amount of fruit and veg we need to eat each day to get the best protection against disease and early death, okay? So really what they did was they combined in this meta-analysis that I referred to earlier, 95 human studies. So all the studies that were out there, and they had 2 million people in their study. And the bottom line was that and then what they found, was that if you had 10 portions of fruit and veg per day, it was associated with significant reductions in heart disease, stroke, cancer, and dying prematurely. So they're big changes, aren't they? Like about 24%, 30% down, okay? And the bottom line was that really we should aim to eat at least 5 portions of fruit and vegetables per day, but the more that we can eat, the better, okay? And when the food pyramid guidelines were revised the year before last, 2016, okay, so the end of 2016, they increased the fruit and vegetables from 5 to 7 portions, so to try and have 5 to 7 portions per day. And that can be any fruit and veg, okay? It doesn't matter. It can be your carrots, cabbage, and in fact, if we go from Kirsty's perspective over there in the corner, your sustainability perspective, the more local it is, the better, okay? And we know that consumption of fruit and vegetables is inadequate in the Irish population, again from the Healthy Ireland survey, so that women are better than men certainly, but only 43% eat 5 or more portions of fruit and veg per day. Okay, so really we should be trying to eat a rainbow. Can you eat a rainbow? Yes, you can, and you should do so every day. Okay. So calcium and iron, all right. Calcium, I think I'm on a bit of a bugbear at the minute because of all the plant milks. So again, your milk is a fantastic food, all right. That doesn't mean that you should be drinking gallons of milk every day, but we should be taking 3 portions from the dairy foods every day. And when we talk about portions from the dairy foods group, we're not talking about cream or butter, unfortunately. We're talking about milk, we're talking about yogurt, and we're talking about cheese, okay? When you look at what is in milk, it has the calcium for bone health, which is really absorbed very well. It has plenty of fluids and electrolytes. It has casein and whey protein, which helps to make us feel full. It supports immune health. It has amino acids, so particularly the branched chain amino acids. So for young fellas or girls who are doing gym work, it's really good, okay? And there's nothing wrong with milk. Okay, and ordinary milk, all right? It helps, it's good for exercise recovery, and it has anti-inflammatory effects. So we should every day. So if we did, a few things, keep our healthy weight, eat more fibre, eat more fruit and veg, have our 3 portions from the dairy food every day. That's really what we need. Iron is important as well, okay? And again, it's something I suppose that we need to be careful of, especially if there's a huge amount of emphasis on plant-based diets. A plant-based diet can be really healthy, but it does need more work, okay? I remember years ago my sister decided for a while she was going to become vegetarian, so my mum just gave her the potatoes and the veg. You know, it lasted for a little while, but she then got a bit fed up of it. If you, like, I'm sure there's a few vegetarians, like Lorraine's a vegetarian, but it does require more work, doesn't it? And it requires more thinking, and you have to eat foods like beans, pulses, nuts, seeds, to make sure that you have sufficient protein and sufficient micronutrients, okay? It's not enough just to eat rice or bread or pasta and the vegetables, okay? You do need to have the mix in order to meet your micronutrient requirements, including iron. And we know that for children, iron is really important. It's important for cognitive development. We know it's really important for maternal health, when people are pregnant, you know, so it is really an important nutrient. Get active, okay? So again, this is the magic bullet. If there was ever a magic bullet, it is exercise. And we underrate it, really. So if you look at the benefits of exercise, it's about health, sleep, healthy weight, management of stress, quality of life. How many times I cycle in and out? How many times have I left here, well, or left where I, you know, and by the time you cycle home, you're actually calm. Or if you leave work and you walk home, or you sort of calm down. So you're wound up perhaps when you leave and you go for a walk or you have a cycle home and you're sort of okay again. You don't bite the head off the first person that you meet, okay? And actually it has huge effects on health. So on type 2 diabetes, on cardiovascular disease, on falls, depression, dementia, joint and back pain, and on cancers. So enormous beneficial effects. And it doesn't have to be an enormous amount of exercise. That's 150 minutes per week. And that can be done in 10-minute brisk walks. So again, if we want to do something that is meaningful, that is not like turning the world upside down, walk. Okay? Or do a bit of cycling. Probably walking is better. But, and then the other one is alcohol, okay? So again, does everyone know what a binge is? Do you know how many drinks are in a binge? 6, exactly, all right. So 6 drinks, and there are 6 drinks that you would get maybe in a pub. No, actually even in a pub now they've increased the measures, you know what I mean? But they're really small drinks. Like when you have a bottle of wine, like I always thought at home, like we would get 4 bottles out of a bottle of wine, 4 glasses out of a bottle of wine, and I thought, oh, that's not too bad. You're supposed to get about 7 out of a bottle of wine. You know, and the students yesterday, I was talking to them, they said, oh no, they get 3 out of a bottle of wine. So, you know, it's really, like, we have to be really careful about drinking, okay? So 1 unit of alcohol is tiny, really, like a standard 30% wine, which when you think of when they used to say 100 mils or 120 mils of wine, most of those wines were maybe 10% by volume, whereas when you look at the percentage now, they're all 12.5, 13, 14%. It's 76 mils. Sure, that's like a drop that you would taste before you, to see whether whether you're going to have the bottle or not. Sorry, bad habits here now. You know, so these, it's really, you have to be really careful. You know, 250 mils of standard 4% beer, only 218 mils of a 4.5% cider. And when you look, say, at beers like Guinness and some of the lagers that used to be around years ago, like Smithwick's and those ones that used to be around, they were all 3.4%. Whereas if you look at all the lagers and the alcohol now, most of them are like 4.3, 4.5, 5% alcohol. So you're really having 2 drinks when you think you're only having 1 drink, okay? And we know that binge drinking is very high in Ireland. So by gender, women are not as bad as men, but the younger women are worse, okay? I've moved on, but... All right, so it's about a third of people in this age group are binge drinking. A third of women in this age group are drinking. And the other thing you've got to remember, and it was just again I was looking at this, is, you know, booze versus treats. Okay, like a glass of white wine is 228 calories, and a cornetto is, you know, 228 calories. Now you might drink what, 2, 3, 4 glasses of wine, but you wouldn't eat 4 cornettos. You'd feel really bad if you did that, wouldn't you? You know, and yet you would drink 4 glasses of wine fine. You know, maybe you wouldn't, but you know, a lot of people would. You know, a glass of champagne, 89 calories. You think, oh, I go on the champagne, it's much lower in calories. But say if you had a packet of Quavers, you know what I mean? It's the same. And you wouldn't eat 4 or 5 packets of Quavers, and you'd. Okay, same gin and tonic. How many gin and tonics could you go? You know, several. You know, and you wouldn't eat 3, 4 caramel bars. So I suppose we just have to be careful. Sometimes we can justify taking alcohol and say, actually, it's all right, it's when you drink and blah, 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 and it's very nice and makes us relaxed and it's Friday night and whatever else. But we do have to remember it contributes to quite a lot of calories as well, okay? And no nutrition. Okay, so the other one that is to be careful of, I suppose, is food mood. So try to make sure that you eat when you're hungry. And I mean, there's a lot of discussion about mindful eating, but again, there's been a lot of work done to show that if you sit and eat in front of the television, you just shovel it in, okay? And, you know, meal times where you sit around the table, all of you, I'm sure, love when you have people over, or if you have a dinner where you sit down and you actually talk about things and chat and discuss. And that's really, I suppose, has been shown to promote good dietary intakes, to promote a healthy weight. So in a way, if we could make a change, it would be to go back and eat together again. You know, and it is really important. It is really important not to get into the habit. I know all of us do sometimes. Like if you do it occasionally, it's fine, but that every night you're not sitting down in front of the television eating, okay? It's been shown that mindless eating, you just eat much more, you don't know what you're eating, and you just keep nibbling away at food. And especially then if you have a few drinks, you know, then you'll definitely eat more. Okay, so again, to be careful of that. Have your blood cholesterol checked and blood pressure checked quite, you know, regularly. People always think blood pressure, cardiovascular disease is a disease of men, but in fact it's not. High blood pressure kills more women than men, okay? Before the age of 64, more men get cardiovascular disease, but as a whole, more women get cardiovascular disease, okay? So it's really important, again, that we monitor our blood cholesterol, eat a diet that is low in saturated fat and contains the unsaturated fats, monitor our blood pressure, eat a diet that is high in fruit and vegetables, contains the dairy produce. I mean, that's been shown to help blood pressure, and low in salt. Okay, so to go on then just a little bit about the 3 conditions that I picked out that I thought were very pertinent to women and to women's health. The first one is breast cancer, and unfortunately 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime, and 1 in 5 of those will be under 50. And there's an enormous amount of misinformation out there. I remember a couple of years ago doing a talk on breast cancer as part of the Breast Predict over in the Conway, and so many women came up to me afterwards, and that was for people with breast cancer or who had breast cancer. So many came up to me afterwards and said they were avoiding all dairy produce, okay, because they were terrified that they would get a recurrence of their breast cancer if they went back on dairy. And really, what the science tells us that there's no link between breast cancer and milk and dairy products, okay? Cows are not injected with hormones to increase their milk production in Ireland, okay? You know, it just doesn't happen. And the very low hormone levels that are there naturally in milk are not going to contribute to breast cancer, okay? There's absolutely no evidence for that. What is known, though, is that overweight and obesity, low physical activity, and alcohol are the contributors to breast cancer, okay? So, you know, sometimes it's easy maybe to latch onto something that sounds a little bit more exciting, so I'm going to go on a dairy-free diet, whereas in fact, monitoring your weight, trying not to drink too much, trying to do a walk every day is actually what will protect you. Soya, there's again a lot of discussion around soya, some of it good, some of it bad. And soya does contain plant compounds, and these are called phytoestrogens. And they are very similar in structure to estrogen. So we know that in the estrogen receptor positive breast cancers, estrogen attaches to the cells and promotes breast cancer. So it has been suggested that soy may increase estrogen levels, and that but this is not the case, and there is also some evidence that it may block estrogen from attaching to breast cancer cells. So really, I suppose what we can only say at the moment is that there is some research suggesting that soya intake is associated with a moderate reduction in breast cancer risk, but we don't have the full evidence. But it's not going to do you any harm to have soy if you want to mix it into your diet, or if you want to use some soy or substitute soy, say once or twice a week for meat. Okay, it's certainly not going to do you any harm. Superfoods, okay, another one. All right. So again, my poor sister has breast cancer at the moment, which is a sarcoma. But anyway, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And my other sister came down and started nearly force feeding her blueberries. Bless her. And she rang me and she said, Carol, Claire, will you just get the other one, I won't mention her name, the other one out of my hair? I'm having diarrhea from the chemo. You know what I mean? And she's down force feeding me blueberries. So like you just, I suppose, have to be careful. There's no official definition of a superfood. Like every fruit and vegetable to a certain extent is a superfood, okay? So no single food contains everything the body needs to be healthy or to function properly. And we know that evidence from experiments in animals or cells may not be relevant. They may have some justification. You hear so much about this. I'm sure all of you have heard all of the evidence and all of the discussion about the ketogenic diet for cancer. I didn't even go there tonight. But a lot of the work done on that was done in cancer cells in a dish, okay? If you extract a chemical from a food and give it in very high doses to a cancer cell, you're going to kill that cancer cell more than likely. That doesn't mean that eating a ketogenic diet or eating lots of goji berries or whatever you want, or blueberries, is going to prevent or cure cancer. Okay, and that's really important to understand. So you can have an experiment that appears to work because it's an enormous amount of an extract given to some number of cells. Okay, and that's why we have to look and understand our hierarchy of evidence. That when we have the randomized controlled trials at the top of that pyramid, and if we have the meta-analysis that looks at all of the studies together, that's when we can say that something works or doesn't work. And one study or two studies that somebody cherry picks, because it suits their book or it suits their thought process, is not evidence, it's anecdote. It's like Djokovic, even though I really like Djokovic. Okay, so again, when we say that it's limited, and we also have to remember that consuming a narrow range or one type of food is not going to give us all the nutrients we need. The other thing we've got to be careful of, again, is that eating a superfood may encourage people to believe that they can balance out on healthy eating habits, okay? It's like, I shouldn't be talking about my family, but like my dad, he said, it doesn't matter if I have loads of cream in my dessert, I'm having a glass of wine and that'll balance it out, and I'm having my Benecol. Now he's fine, to be honest, but I mean, that doesn't balance out. You know what I mean? Like if you eat lots of cream and your Benecol, it doesn't balance out, okay? And no matter if you have a half bottle of wine or even a whole bottle of wine sometimes, you know what I mean? That definitely won't balance out. Okay, so including a superfood does not combat a diet high in calories, saturated fat, etc., or being overweight or having low physical activity. So again, I suppose just to mention osteoporosis, something that is really pertinent. We know that it's very frequent in women. It's frequent. It occurs in about 1 in 4 men, but 1 in 2 women who will develop osteoporosis over their lifetime. And what is very worrying is, I suppose, is the fact that a lot of young girls are now swapping to, say, plant milks or juices, and the active period when you lay down your peak bone mass is this time here, and then after the age of about 25, 26, it starts to decline, and then when you reach the menopause, it flies down even more, and then it slows again, okay? So really, we're building like a ticking time bomb if people don't take sufficient calcium in their diet at a young age, okay? It is determined by genetics, but diet and lifestyle play a huge part. And really what we want to do is try and maximise the calcium in our bones, while we're young, and then to delay the progression when we get older, okay? And you've got to remember that bone is a living tissue. It's not just stagnant tissue, it is a living tissue. I think our skeleton changes about every 7 to 10 years. We actually completely replace our skeleton, okay? So it is a changing tissue, okay? So we want to keep our bones strong and slow down. We want to take regular exercise. We don't want to drink alcohol in excess or to smoke. To maintain a healthy weight, eat a diet rich in calcium, and I think I've harped on enough about that already, and vitamin D. So vitamin D is one of the vitamins that we actually do need to take in supplementary form in Ireland, okay? We are at a latitude where we don't make vitamin D in our skin in the winter months at all, okay? And even in the summer months, I mean, last year was different, but even in the summer months, we don't make an enormous amount. So vitamin D is one of the supplements that we need to take. Now, there are quite a lot of products out there that are supplemented with vitamin D. You know, all the fortified milks, they're supplemented with vitamin D. You know, so there are, but everybody, the Food Safety Authority has made a recommendation. They've revised it now just this January past to say that we should all be having 10 micrograms of vitamin D in our diet from a mixture of food and supplements, okay, and fortified foods, okay. And we know from the dietary surveys that only about 3 to 4 micrograms is found in our diet. So we do need to choose the fortified foods or else take a dietary supplement, or maybe both, okay. And then other nutrients for bones include your proteins and other vitamins, okay. And then the last one I just wanted to touch off a little bit was irritable bowel, because that affects about 1 in 5 women. And again, I suppose just to go through what maybe will help with that. So alcohol may trigger it, okay. Caffeine, the evidence is inconclusive, so some people will say it does, but the evidence is inconclusive. Spicy foods, it seems to affect symptoms. And irritable bowel disease is a chronic condition. It affects and causes huge problems for a lot of women, as I said, about 1 in 5, so it is quite problematic. Dietary fat can have issues. The symptoms may increase after high amounts of fat, so no more than about 78 grams of fat per day. But that fits in with all of the other things I've said to you today. You know what I mean? That you keep to a low saturated fat diet. You try and have plenty of fruit and veg, plenty of fibre, okay? Fluid, there's very little research, but we should all have at least 6 to 8 glasses of fluid per day. And then eating habits, probably there's not enough evidence, but try to eat a healthy, regular eating pattern. Sit down to the meals again and don't rush them, okay? Milk and milk products, only if people are lactose intolerant is it problematic. And then dietary fibre, linseeds can help, okay? Gluten won't help. And the probiotics that are out there, there is some evidence suggested that they may be of help. So what the advice is that you would try one probiotic product for about 4 weeks, and if it works, then keep with it. And if it doesn't work, well then stop it. But at the end of the day, a probiotic product, if it's in a yogurt, like a probiotic yogurt, is going to be a good source of calcium, a good source of your B vitamins, and it's not going to do you any harm, okay? FODMAPs is the big thing that has got a lot of attention recently, and they are fermentable carbohydrates. And a low FODMAPs diet is now very popular for the treatment of irritable bowel syndrome. And I suppose the issue with that is that it's a short-term treatment. People shouldn't be on low FODMAPs diet for more than about 6 to 8 weeks. If they're on it for any longer than that, it can actually detrimentally affect your bowel the microbiome, the bacteria in your bowel, okay? So it's actually a short-term treatment that helps sort of realign the bacteria in your bowel, okay? But if you are on a low FODMAP diet, you really do need to speak to a dietitian to make sure that you're meeting your nutrition requirements. It's actually quite a difficult diet to adhere to, okay? Because you're cutting out all of these carbohydrates that ferment in your gut, okay? So really, I suppose, in summary, what is healthy eating for women? I think what you need to be careful of is beware of the fake nutritionists giving false and non-evidence-based nutritional advice. And it's every time you go into Instagram, you see another one. Okay. The best diet is a balanced diet. Don't cut out food groups. Remember the importance of breakfast and take breaks. Have healthy snacks on hand, consider cooking in bulk. Plant-based meals, as I said, are good, but not to forget a little bit of meat a couple of times a week. And really reject diets. If you're going to reject diets, eat more veg. So no following diets, just try and eat normal food, okay? Eat more veg and follow people who make you feel bad. Do exercise you enjoy and try and get a bit more sleep. Now that's something we all need to do, you know, because again, sleep and sufficient amount of sleep has been associated with better body weights, with better cardiovascular health, etc. Keep away from Instagram. You have a good set of liver, a good liver provided you don't completely abuse it, all right? And a good set of kidneys, hopefully, as well. And then just really take a break. I mean, sorry, now I've just, what can be done to take breaks, you know, try and eat breakfast, as I said. Lunches don't have to be fancy or complicated. Cook them in bulk at the beginning of the week. You know, soup with plenty of veggies in it and a bit of protein with it. A yogurt or something is perfect. Try and have snacks that are healthy during the day. Protein bars can be fine if you're doing a big workout, but they're not required otherwise. And there's plenty of resources there. If you look at, say, some of the sites like Safe Food, they have lovely recipes, like really healthy recipes, free to download, plenty of ideas. So look at those. Try and have a walk at lunchtime. Miriam, I don't know if Miriam's in the audience, but she was trying to get us all to walk around UCD every lunchtime. It would lasted about a week, but she's really good. And she'll try and pull it up again. You know, but again, like to try and get out and have a walk. It does clear your mind. It gives you a chance to chat. It gives you a chance to sort things out. I mean, there was a good few things that we sorted out on some of those walks. We really do need to start them again. You know, and accurate advice, as I said, can be found from Safe Food, from some of the websites from the FSAI, from INDI, the Irish Nutrition and Dietetic Institute. So really then I just want to say to thank Dolores and Lorraine for organising this, and the next one is going to be on nutrition and heart health, which is Breach, who's up in the corner with her little girl, on Monday the 20th of May, and then there's one on nutrition and mental health, which Lorraine is going to do in June. September, Charlene is going to do one for mums and babies, and then Early Childhood Africa is going to do in November. So that's the series. So it's hopefully you enjoyed it and it's of interest. And really, I think I want to thank you all for coming, to remind you that science rocks, also that mums matter. You know, life is tough, my darling, but so are you all. And to eat plenty of fruit and veg, and to wish you all the best for International Women's Day.